What seemed like a normal flight turned into a powerful lesson. A flight attendant targets a quiet African passenger with disrespect, not knowing he is the president of Burkina Faso, Ibrahim Traoré. As tensions rise mid-air, the truth is revealed after landing, leaving the entire crew and a French CEO in shock. This dramatic story highlights dignity, strength, and the moment when hidden power is finally seen by all. The sun had just begun to rise over the quiet, peaceful airport. Inside the cold terminal, Ibrahim Traoré waited calmly at gate 37. He didn't wear a suit, didn't have bodyguards, and carried nothing flashy. To most, he looked like any other African traveler, but this man was not ordinary. He was Ibrahim Traoré, the president of Burkina Faso. He preferred to travel privately and humbly, no cameras, no loud announcements. That's how he moved. He believed in staying grounded, blending in with people. He had just returned from a European diplomatic mission where he discussed gold, sovereignty, and Africa's future. Now he simply wanted to go home. As he approached the Air France flight to Ouagadougou, he greeted one of the airport workers in French with a warm smile. "Bonjour." The worker smiled back, unaware of his true identity. Traoré boarded the flight, nodded at the crew, and sat in business class, row 2A near the window. No one noticed, and that's how he liked it. Meanwhile, a French CEO, used to red carpets, champagne, and first-class privileges, arrived at the gate, expecting the same treatment. When told business class was full, he wasn't pleased. He demanded a seat upgrade, claiming his importance in African business affairs. He was used to getting his way, and the airline scrambled to satisfy him. The senior flight attendant, Claire, tall, white, and dressed impeccably, was called in. With a forced smile, she boarded the plane, scanning the cabin. Her eyes locked onto Traoré, sitting calmly in his seat. Dressed simply, no signs of status, he appeared to her as someone who didn't belong. Claire, a senior Air France air hostess, unforgettable encounter with Captain Ibrahim Traoré. She politely but firmly asked to see his boarding pass. He complied. The seat number was correct. Still, something inside her didn't sit right. Moments later, she returned with a more direct tone. "Sir, we may need to move you to accommodate another passenger. Would you mind relocating to economy? We will compensate you." Ibrahim, calm and quiet, raised an eyebrow. "Why me?" he asked. Claire replied vaguely, "Just a small adjustment for another guest." "A guest more important than me?" he questioned. She didn't respond. The other passengers glanced around, sensing discomfort, but no one intervened. Traoré softly but firmly replied, "No. I will remain in my seat." Claire was stunned. A man like him saying no? Especially an African man? She tried again, but Traoré stood his ground. "If this is operational," he said, "then explain why I'm being asked and not anyone else." Flustered, Claire walked away, then began targeting other black men in business class. Her second mistake. Traoré watched silently, his face composed, his mind sharp. Eventually, Claire pointed to a young African man and said, "You, sir, we need you to move to economy." The young man asked, "Why me?" She gave no answer. "Just took his boarding pass." That's when Ibrahim Traoré stood up. "Enough," he said, his voice calm but heavy with authority. "You are making decisions based on skin, not on tickets. That's called discrimination." Claire, shaken, asked him to sit and not cause a scene. But his stare unsettled her. He didn't yell. He didn't reveal who he was. He didn't need to. He simply sat back, composed. The flight continued. Passengers relaxed, the tension lingered. Claire brought water to Traoré mid-flight, trying to mend things. No apology. No respect. Meanwhile, the CEO was being pampered. Laughing, sipping champagne, chatting with Claire about his important projects in Africa. He boasted that Burkina Faso was lucky to have him bringing order to chaos. An African nurse on board whispered to her neighbor, "That's our president." They don't even know who they're humiliating. Nobody dared to speak. Ibrahim stared out the window, peaceful but resolute. As the plane began to descend into Ouagadougou, passengers noticed something unusual: rows of black SUVs, military vehicles, and a presidential escort waiting on the tarmac. Whispers spread inside the cabin. Are we landing in a war zone? No, that's military protocol, one replied. Maybe someone important is arriving, another suggested. The CEO smirked. Must be for me. Claire laughed, preparing to escort him ahead of others. But the moment the plane stopped, everything changed. Presidential guards lined up in full uniform, weapons at their sides. Behind them stood top ministers, defense, foreign affairs, and the head of security, waiting in the heat like statues of power. She politely but firmly asked to see his boarding pass. He complied. The seat number was correct. Still, something inside her didn't sit right. Moments later, she returned with a more direct tone. Sir, we may need to move you to accommodate another passenger. Would you mind relocating to economy? We will compensate you. Ibrahim, calm and quiet, raised an eyebrow. Why me? He asked. Claire replied vaguely. Just a small adjustment for another guest. A guest more important than me? He questioned. She didn't respond. The other passengers glanced around, sensing discomfort, but no one intervened. Traore softly but firmly replied, No, I will remain in my seat. Claire was stunned. A man like him saying no? Especially an African man? She tried again, but Traore stood his ground. If this is operational, he said, then explain why I'm being asked and not anyone else. Flustered, Claire walked away, then began targeting other black men in business class. Her second mistake. Traore watched silently, his face composed, his mind sharp. Then Claire pointed to a young African man and said, You, sir, we need you to move to economy. The man looked confused. Why me? She didn't answer. She just took his boarding pass. That's when Ibrahim Traoré stood up. Enough, he said. His voice was calm but heavy with authority. You are making decisions based on skin, not on tickets. That's called discrimination. Claire turned pale. Sir, please don't cause a scene. Her breath caught. There was something about his stare, steady and powerful. But she still didn't know who he was. To her, he was just another passenger acting like a troublemaker. She walked off again, muttering in French, These people, always making noise. Meanwhile, the CEO was escorted on board. Claire greeted him with extra warmth, offering him champagne. We're fixing the seating issue, monsieur, she said. Traore calmly sat back and fastened his seatbelt. He tapped the armrest with his fingers. He didn't need to say a word. Soon the entire world would know what had happened and who he really was. The CEO, smug in his seat, didn't even glance at Traore as he passed. The flight attendant checked on him constantly. More towels. More champagne. The message was clear. You matter. That man does not. The plane took off into the sky, leaving French soil, but carrying a moment that would shake two nations. Inside the cabin, everything seemed normal. Passengers relaxed. Seatbelt signs turned off. But beneath the surface, something powerful was growing. Traore didn't complain. He didn't call anyone. He didn't reveal himself. He just sat quietly, like a man watching a movie unfold, knowing exactly how it would end. Claire avoided eye contact. Something about his presence unsettled her. She returned mid-flight with a forced smile. Would you like anything to drink, sir? Water is fine, he replied. She nodded and walked away. No apology. No courtesy. The CEO, meanwhile, was basking in attention. Claire laughed at his jokes, leaned in when he spoke, and eagerly asked about his important projects in Africa. With arrogant pride, he replied, Burkina Faso is lucky to have us. We're bringing order to chaos. Claire nodded, clearly impressed, completely unaware that the very man being insulted was sitting just 2 rows away. A woman in the cabin, an African nurse returning to Bobo Dioulasso, noticed everything. She shook her head and whispered to her neighbor, That's our president. They don't even know who they're humiliating. Her neighbor's eyes widened in disbelief, but no one said a word. The president clearly didn't want attention, and no one dared break the silence. Hours passed. The lights dimmed. Most passengers slept, but Ibrahim Traoré stayed awake, staring quietly out the window. He wasn't angry. He was patient. And when the wheels touched down in Ouagadougou, that patience would become history. As the plane prepared to land, the cabin lights flickered on. The captain made the landing announcement in French and English. Passengers stretched, fastened their seat belts. Outside, the golden sun lit up the red soil of the city below. What no one could yet see from inside the plane was the growing convoy awaiting the aircraft. Rows of black SUVs, military vehicles, and a full presidential escort lining the tarmac. Whispers rippled through the cabin. "Are we landing in a war zone?" one foreigner asked nervously. "No, that's just military protocol," someone replied. "Maybe someone important is arriving," another said. The French CEO smirked, chuckling. "Must be for me." Claire laughed along, already preparing to escort him off the plane first, clipboard in hand. But the moment the plane stopped, everything changed. Through the window, passengers watched as presidential guards in sharp uniform lined up with weapons at their sides. Behind them stood Burkina Faso's top ministers, the Minister of Defense, the Foreign Minister, and the head of security, standing still in the heat like statues of power. Claire peeked through the window and gasped. "What is this?" she whispered. The CEO stood, smoothing his suit. "Clearly this is for me," he said. "I told you I'm involved in big projects." But before anyone could move, a tall officer in a black beret boarded the aircraft. His boots echoed through the aisle. Every face turned as he stopped at seat 2A. He raised his hand to his forehead in a crisp military salute. "Mr. President, welcome home." The entire cabin fell silent. You could hear hearts stop. Claire's eyes dropped. Her hands began to tremble. Ibrahim Traoré slowly stood. Calm. Dignified. Not a word spoken. The CEO stepped back, mouth agape. "President," he stammered. Traoré gave a simple nod. Not angry. Not proud. Just a man who no longer needed to explain himself. Another officer stepped in. "We have instructions," he said coldly, looking directly at Claire and the CEO. "You two will come with us." Claire's voice cracked. "Wait, what? Why me?" "You are being detained for questioning," the officer replied. "You have publicly disrespected the head of state on national soil. That is a serious offense." Claire stammered, trying to explain. "No, this has to be a mistake. I was just doing my job." But no one listened. Traoré stepped off the plane and was immediately met by his people, his guards, his ministers, and a cheering crowd. Beyond the airport fence, cameras flashed. The truth was out. The man they judged by appearance was now seen for who he truly was. Back on the plane, Claire and the CEO were placed in handcuffs. Passengers watched in stunned silence as the two were escorted down the steps, their heads lowered, arrogance crushed. And that was only the beginning. The tarmac blazed beneath the Burkina Faso sun, but all eyes were on the two who had once strutted with pride, now being led away in shame. They were placed in separate black vehicles, surrounded by elite presidential guards. No one said a word. Not even the officers. The silence was deafening. It was the silence of dignity reclaiming its place. Inside the terminal, President Ibrahim Traoré stood before a small group of press. Calmly, without anger, he spoke. "In Burkina Faso, we don't look at a man's skin to measure his worth. We don't bow to money or to old colonial habits. Here, we respect dignity, humanity, and our people. That is the new Africa." The story spread like wildfire. Footage of the salute. The CEO being dragged away. Social media exploded. News clips played on loop. The youth across the continent celebrated. Hashtags trended. The Ministry of Justice formally charged Claire and the CEO with public insult and discrimination against a head of state. The French embassy tried to intervene, but Traoré responded firmly. "This is not a colony. This is a sovereign nation. They will face justice like anyone else." Air France scrambled to control the damage, issuing a generic apology within 24 hours, filled with corporate language and empty regret. But it wasn't enough. Outraged citizens across Africa called for boycotts. Claire, now in a detention center outside Ouagadougou, broke down in tears during questioning. "I didn't know who he was," she sobbed. "I was just following procedures." The investigator responded coldly. "You didn't need to know who he was. You just needed to treat him like a human being." The CEO now faced legal action in both Burkina Faso and France. He tried to use his influence, but the courts made a powerful ruling. No immunity. No special treatment. Justice would be equal. Traore never gloated. He never mocked them. He simply returned to his presidential duties, building roads, empowering young people, strengthening the military. 2 rows away, the very man he insulted sat in silence.